The Brooklyn Solutions platform has been designed to handle not only processes out of the box, but the ability to customize workflows and data assessments to build processes within your business that exist currently on suboptimal factors such as spreadsheets, PowerPoints, Word templates, and potentially other platforms that aren't designed for supplier and contract management, such as intranets. What we do within the platform, we allow this seamless business process onboarding, and the example that we're using here is that of the supplier or a supplier onboarding process that in effect is a parent process that's got lots of other smaller sub-processes running through it. So what we work with customers to do is encourage them to bring out their definition of a process. In this case, is a supplier onboarding process that essentially confirms that the business has got all the governance, legal and operational requirements in place for business continuity plans, risk assessments, etc. And then on that basis looks at how we would create a policy. So from the policy engine, how and when does this business process type need to be triggered? In this case, it's onboarding, so it needs to be triggered for all new suppliers that come on to the platform. We essentially set that up for you so that every supplier comes on and it triggers one of these processes. What we're then able to do is define a set of stages, in this case 4 stages that a number of steps, in this case 12 steps, needs to go through. The first stages were risk and resilience capture, the second stage legal and compliance and assessment, handover and approval, and then fully onto the completion stage. What we do for each step arrangement within the platform is the ability for you to then step or configure these step options accordingly. In this case, a title, which is essentially a short version of the objective, a description, how long in days you expect the operator to take to do this activity, what are the start and completion conditions, when should it start, when it's complete, what should it do, depend on the conditions and the outcomes of how it's complete, what should it do, should it do a different thing if the status is different. In this case, you can define the status is, in this case, a simple status of not started, in progress, off-track minor issues, off-track major issues, cancelled, completed, and then working through those stop or start conditions. Who the owner is for each step or stage, so the role in which case that person related to this entity is going to be the owner if they've got that role. What's the logic of the steps? And importantly, what's the event type? So when these events create, do you want to cover it off as an action item? Is it a review item, so a meeting, a review meeting you need to have? Is it an actual survey? Or does it trigger another one of these process flows like a child process, in which case it will trigger a process, it will go through all these logic states again and it will wait till it's complete before moving on to the next step of its parent. And in using those, do you want to use template libraries? So we have the ability at all these levels to create templates so you can get a repeatable, consistent outcome based on how the actions formatted, what the events are and the agenda items are in the review meetings, the questions asked at survey, or again, like I said, similar to this, what steps the process underneath carries out on that basis. And you can see here they all progress through not started, in progress, so the statuses are working towards complete, and then they repeat one after the other until the whole event has taken place or it's cancelled. This is an example of a common requirement for us, so an issues or incidents type process. We can have issues that are just started manually that arise. We can have risk events that have risks that are managed, and through the management of those risks, even when they're in the acceptance period, you can then see if they can crystallise, you can make an issue out of them. Or in some cases we're asked to do and look at incidents, so we can integrate with systems such as ServiceNow to get major incident information coming through that can be managed. And in this example you can see the BitTech supplier under its contract has a couple of ongoing issues at the moment that are being managed, one of them overdue and one of them's a growing concern. You can click into these to get the details. When you click into them you can start to see the type of actions I was referring to on the first page, which is you can see the actions that are associated with it, any files, the people that are involved, the workflow profile, so what is issue and incident, what's it about, what's the detail that's required, any surveys that have been triggered, any meetings that have been had about it, etc. And if necessary, rules around data population. On this page here you can see that there was a risk associated with this issue around Q2 performance SLAs not being met, and that has been assessed accordingly. So as an example, we get involved with regularly as well as on-site audit, so another process type whereby a supplier is got, or a buyer has got audit rights into a supplier organisation. They execute that, they execute one of these flows, They execute the on-site audit, and from that, an on-site audit is triggered as a survey, which is a series of assessments that they go through, and a scoring of pass or fail is derived from that. You can see here this on-site audit has started to trigger. These are the steps it's gone through. So it's gone through a planning phase. It's then gone to the pre-audit communication, how the approach, the audit, and the opening meeting is set. So a meeting about how that with the supplier is going to be structured, what the approach is going to be, and it goes all the way down to actually here, which is, in this case, it's a pharmaceutical supplier audit for the pharmaceutical industry, and the on-site audit has triggered the survey, which takes them through a series of questions to work through as part of that audit, and then onto the more completion and review elements of the process, which have been started but not yet completed. We use the same methodology to track certs for renewal. So in this case, we're looking at certifications and accreditations process. You can see here's different types of accreditations that have been being tracked. One against an organisation called BitTech Solutions, looking for an ISO 27001 cert. We can go into that and see from a surveys or an assessments perspective, they've been sent the ISO 27001 verification assessment. You can look at that. What the supplier would have seen is and received is this. They would have been able to update this on an annual basis as well. So provide their cert, that completes, comes back, shows as completed. That can then be checked by an operator, and then it can be done on a yearly basis and triggered as part of a policy. That's collection for you as an organisation. They're just a few examples of the processes. As I've shown a couple of times, you can also customise the surveys and assessments that these processes trigger. We have lots of out-of-the-box surveys, but you can, as an example here, click into a survey and create one from either a template we've used or from scratch. Anyone that's used like SurveyMonkey, Microsoft Forms, Google Forms, etc. I have an idea about how to use it from a structuring the questions and radio button questions versus checkboxes. This is actually one we did for a customer that was related to a security request a few years ago now, Log4j vulnerability. We actually helped them contact 500 suppliers, of which over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, they managed to, using the logic in the survey, discount 80% of those suppliers as not being in scope, but worked with the remaining 20% to get it down to the point that they only had to speak to 12 or 15 suppliers that were impacted by the vulnerability, and seeing what the spread was and the damage done and how that would impact the customer and the supplier in through conversations. Previously, they'd have mailed 500 suppliers and been lucky to get 10% response, so not really knew where they were with it. Brooklyn managed to draw that to a conclusion very quickly.